Picture this: you're standing in line at Starbucks, running on 3 hours of sleep, rage, half a banana, and a double espresso. The person in front of you is arguing with the barista about their venti extra hot quad shot half-calf 3/4 almond milk 1/8 oat milk shaken not stirred macchiato with organic Madagascan vanilla drizzle, and you're wondering how bad prison really could be. Your phone vibrates, another breaking news alert, and suddenly, you're drowning in headlines about market crashes, political drama, riots, apocalyptic weather and lizard people. This constant feeling of stress, chaos, and dread? Maybe it's not just the way things are. Maybe, just maybe, it's exactly how some very powerful people want you to feel. Chapter 1: What are vibrations? Okay, time for a quick sciencey spiritual crash course in vibes. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the energy? Like you can practically smell the tension in a boardroom or sense the excitement like electricity at a concert? Well, that's vibration, my friend. We talk about this all the time, perhaps without really realizing it. We say things like, the vibes are off, or something or someone is giving off weird vibes. You can cut the tension with a knife. We talk about killing the mood and not feeling it. No one needs to explain what it is. We intuitively understand these phrases and this sentiment. This is part of the collective human experience. We sense energy. High vibes mean joy, creativity, and love. Basically, the energy you feel after a weekend at the beach or when your favorite team wins the championship. Low vibes are anger, fear, anxiety, a family dinner during election season, that sort of stuff. This idea of vibrations isn't just hippie jargon. Well, maybe a little, but it's also backed by science and ancient teachings. Everything's connected. But why are we, the general masses, seemingly consistently stuck in low vibrations? Is it a conspiracy? Is this all some grand plan by the elite to keep us down, so they can stay up? And if so, then why and how? Maybe, just maybe, the oligarchy and those secret handshake billionaire types know something they are keeping to themselves. Chapter 2: The Elite Strategy. Let's imagine this for a second. You're a billionaire sipping on your morning organic gluten-free avocado-infused power smoothie in your penthouse, while looking down on the plebs in the city like a Bond villain. Life is really good. You control the banks, you control the media, the food supply, AI, and more, hoarding every resource while you push humanity into some dystopic vision like a twisted, inhumane Scrooge character who demanded a subscription fee from the ghosts. Now, what would happen if all these lowly commoners were to look up and notice how there are a select few who obviously were never taught that sharing is caring? You reflect on that time you watched A Bug's Life and remember how disquieting that scene where Hopper explains the fragility of power and wonder if your comfortable existence might be threatened if anyone ever noticed what was going on. How do you keep all these ants, aka us, from rising up and taking over your castle? Simple: keep them distracted, divided, and drained, just enough to keep them entertained. The 1% knows that if you can keep people stressed, anxious, and exhausted, they'll be too busy fighting each other on X to fight you. Step 1. Flood the media with fear, the foundation of control. If your enemy is secure at all points, be prepared for him. If he is in superior strength, evade him. If your opponent is temperamental, seek to irritate him. Sun Tzu. The first phase is all about destabilization. Fear is the easiest way to manipulate people, as it overrides logic and puts them into survival mode. The goal here is to create a constant state of crisis, a rolling cycle of panic so people never feel safe or in control. This can be done by over-exaggerating threats, both real and imaginary, keeping people in a state of hyper-alertness, doom-scrolling, breaking news every hour, shifting narratives just enough so that no one knows what's real anymore. Mental exhaustion leads to compliance. Using repetition, say something often enough, and it becomes truth. By ensuring that the general population is always emotionally reactive, you weaken their ability to think critically or organize effectively. Fearful people seek protection rather than freedom. Step 2. Stoke the flames of division, rage bait and social fragmentation. All warfare is based on deception. Sun Tzu. Now that fear has set the foundation, the next step is to divide the people against each other. If the masses are busy fighting amongst themselves, they won't unite against the true architects of their suffering. Divide and conquer is the ultimate control strategy, and it's executed by Weaponizing identity politics, make sure every group sees others as enemies. Race, class, gender, political views, every possible fault line is exploited, flooding social media with rage bait. Algorithms push the most emotionally charged content because anger gets engagement, encouraging cancel culture and self-policing. When the people censor each other, the elites don't have to do the dirty work, keeping the working class fragmented. If the lower and middle classes ever united against the ultra-wealthy, the entire system would collapse. Instead, they are kept focused on hating each other. As the chaos unfolds, the elites don't even have to lift a finger. The people dismantle their own unity, making collective resistance impossible. Step 3. Rinse, repeat, and profit. Manufactured chaos equals more power and wealth. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Sun Tzu. With the population exhausted, anxious, and fighting amongst themselves, the ruling class can do whatever they please with minimal resistance. This phase is about exploiting the confusion to push policies, laws, and financial moves that further consolidate power, pass sweeping surveillance laws under the guise of keeping people safe, manipulate markets. Chaos always benefits those with money. Stocks crash, buy low. Stimulus checks. Inflation goes up, and the elites own hard assets, crush small businesses while mega-corporations consolidate industries, ensure mass dependence on the state through economic instability. A desperate population is easy to control. Conclusion: the final checkmate. By the time people realize what's happening, they're too divided, too exhausted, and too dependent to fight back. Meanwhile, the elites sit in their private enclaves, sipping expensive whiskey, watching their portfolios skyrocket, and flipping through The Art of War, admiring how well the strategy has worked. Chapter 3: Media and the Culture of Fear. Let's be real for a second: if it bleeds, it leads. Media isn't just about informing, it's about captivating, and nothing grabs attention like good old-fashioned fear-mongering. Have you ever noticed how every news segment feels like it was ripped from a horror movie? Coming up next, why the world is ending and how it's probably your fault. It's not an accident, folks. Fear keeps you glued to your screen and keeps those ad dollars flowing. Even on social media, the algorithms have a sixth sense for drama. The more emotionally charged or negative the content, the more you're likely to engage. It's like your narcissistic ex who knew exactly what buttons to push, except now it's a faceless corporation that wants to sell you expensive anxiety medication after making you anxious. Coincidence? Maybe. Genius? Absolutely. Behind the scenes, there are boardrooms full of elites twirling their metaphorical mustaches and cackling like cartoon villains. The media thrives on manufactured urgency, where selective framing, strategic omissions, and exaggerated statistics create an illusion of crisis that keeps people hooked. It's not about outright lying, it's about massaging the truth just enough to evoke maximum emotional response. The art of the half-truth headline. Let's dissect how headlines are crafted to mislead while remaining technically accurate. 1. The percent trap. Death toll rises by 50% in tragic incident. Sounds horrifying, right? Your brain immediately envisions mass casualties. But if the original number was 2, and now it's 3, that's technically a 50% increase, but not exactly an apocalyptic event. Percentages are intentionally vague because they create drama without context. 2. The scientists' warn trick. Experts say climate change could make entire cities uninhabitable by 2050. The word could is doing some serious heavy lifting here. It's speculative, but the fear it instills is real. This might be one fringe expert's worst-case scenario out of 100 possible outcomes. But nuance doesn't sell, fear does. 3. The vague authority move. Shocking new study reveals X is more dangerous than we thought. Who conducted the study? What was the sample size? What were the parameters? Doesn't matter. The headline doesn't give you that info because you're not supposed to think critically, you're supposed to react emotionally. 4. The isolated incident phenomenon. Violent crime on the rise in major cities. Did overall violent crime increase? Or did one city experience a single high-profile crime wave? Context is omitted, leaving you with a generalized sense of danger. If a rare event suddenly happens twice, that's a 100% increase, but that doesn't mean it's suddenly common. 5. The out-of-context comparison. X now kills more people than Y. Example: Shark attacks kill more people than plane crashes sounds terrifying, until you realize both are incredibly rare, and you're more likely to die from a vending machine falling on you. How social media supercharges the fear machine. Even if a headline isn't intentionally misleading, social media algorithms turn it into a wildfire of hysteria. Negative content spreads faster. Our brains are wired to pay more attention to threats than positive news. Engagement equals outrage. The more emotional the response, the more people comment, share, and argue. Context disappears. By the time the headline is reposted for the 10th time, the actual story barely matters. It's a self-sustaining loop of anxiety. 1. Media pumps out sensationalized headlines. 2. Social media amplifies the most dramatic ones. 3. People react emotionally, keeping the cycle alive. 4. Advertisers cash in. Meanwhile, the people running the show aren't panicking at all, because they know the game. They're too busy riding the algorithm-driven chaos straight to the bank. And now, with the oligarchy in control of AI, these headlines will be even more precisely engineered to exploit human psychology, fine-tuned in real time to maximize fear, outrage, and division at a scale never before seen. Chapter 4: Food, Health and Chemical Imbalance. You've probably heard the phrase, "You are what you eat." But when you look at the average grocery store, it's more like you are what multi-billion-dollar corporations have designed to keep you consuming, craving, and miserable. The food industry isn't exactly run by nutrition monks. They're more like financial wizards in three-piece suits with a knack for turning addictive ingredients into profits. It's worth noting that many products on supermarket shelves are marketed as food but don't even meet the standard definition of food. For instance, Kraft singles can't legally be labeled as cheese. Instead, they're classified as a pasteurized prepared cheese product because they contain less than 51% cheese. Similarly, Breyers has rebranded some of its offerings from ice cream to frozen dairy desserts to align with FDA regulations for similar reasons. These examples highlight how certain products are engineered to be more about profit than nutrition, often leading consumers to crave more while providing less genuine nourishment. We are overconsuming and undernourished. Many of these questionable foods are marketed as healthy simply because they check a box that we are told is important somehow, whether it's low sugar, low fat, high protein, or keto-friendly. But just because something is low in one thing doesn't mean it's good for you. Diet sodas, for example, they're sugar-free, but packed with artificial sweeteners that can mess with metabolism and gut health. Or low-fat yogurts, which remove fat, but add a ton of artificial thickeners and sweeteners to make up for lost texture and taste. And let's not forget high-protein snack bars, which are often just glorified candy bars with a sprinkle of protein powder. The reality is that ultra-processed junk is still junk, whether it's labeled healthy or not. But thanks to slick marketing and convenient loopholes in food regulations, these products keep flying off the shelves, while consumers are left wondering why they're still sick, tired, sluggish, inflamed, in pain, on medication and constantly craving more. Why do you think fast food and soda are cheaper than organic vegetables? It's not an accident, it's not just a coincidence or even a supply chain issue, it's part of a bigger plan. Keep the masses eating junk, and you've got a population that's low on energy, high on brain fog, and conveniently more likely to buy whatever garbage the media is peddling next. It's like the perfect evil plan, except there's no cape and no lair, just a bunch of old dudes in a boardroom talking about maximizing profits while our society collectively overdoses on high fructose corn syrup. Chapter 5: The Education System and the Dulling of Creativity. Remember high school? When they told you algebra was going to be vital to your future, but somehow forgot to teach you about taxes, emotional intelligence, or how to challenge a system rigged in favor of billionaires? Yeah, me too. The traditional education system is basically an assembly line where creativity goes to die, and obedience is the goal. Today's education system isn't interesting in producing the next generation of critical thinkers. Our children are herded into mandatory warehouses that look like they took inspiration from the factory system of the Industrial Revolution with the addition of fluorescent lighting and emotional trauma. When was the last time your creativity was truly encouraged at school? If you were anything like me, doodling in the margins was basically a crime punishable by detention. And questioning the curriculum? Forget about it. The system was never about fostering independent thought. It was about making sure you fit neatly into whatever box the 1% wants you in, preferably a box labeled conformist worker or silent consumer. Chapter 6: Work, Stress, and the Never-Ending Cycle. Most of us are exhausted, not just tired, but mentally, physically, and emotionally drained in a way that a strong coffee or a self-care Sunday can't fix. We're working 40, 50, even 60 hours a week, yet somehow, it's still not enough. Rent keeps going up, groceries cost more than ever, and the price of basic necessities, from electricity to public transport, just keeps climbing. One unexpected bill, a medical emergency, a car repair, a rent increase, and suddenly, you're in crisis mode. And here's the kicker: wages haven't increased in line with inflation. The cost of living has exploded, yet real wages have barely moved. In many cases, people are earning less today, when adjusted for inflation, than they were decades ago. The result? More people working longer hours just to stand still. Meanwhile, in the UK, 0-hour contracts, which offer no guaranteed work, no stability, and no security, have become the norm for millions. Workers are left waiting by their phones, unsure if they'll have enough hours to pay rent this month. It's a gig economy nightmare where companies get all the flexibility while employees get all the uncertainty. And while we grind ourselves into the ground, what are the ultra-rich doing? Buying up entire neighborhoods, dodging taxes, and betting on the next crisis to make themselves even richer. They've created a system where we're so overworked, overstressed, and underpaid that we don't even have the time or energy to fight back. We're stuck scrambling for crumbs while they feast, and they count on us being too burned out to ask why. The disparity between the working majority and the ultra-wealthy is stark, with real-world examples highlighting how the affluent capitalize on systemic advantages. 1. Real estate acquisition. Investment firms like BlackRock have been purchasing vast numbers of homes, sometimes entire neighborhoods, exacerbating housing shortages and driving up property prices, making homeownership increasingly unattainable for average families. 2. Tax avoidance. Investigations have revealed that billionaires such as Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Warren Buffett have paid minimal income taxes relative to their immense wealth. For instance, in some years, these individuals have managed to pay zero federal income tax, exploiting legal loopholes to minimize their tax obligations. 3. Profiting during crises. In 2022, 95 food and energy corporations more than doubled their profits, amassing $306 billion in windfall gains. A significant portion of these profits, approximately $257 billion, was distributed to wealthy shareholders, including billionaire families like the Waltons, who own half of Walmart and received $8.5 billion in dividends over the year. During the COVID-19 pandemic, several companies experienced substantial profit increases, often due to heightened demand for their products or services. A notable example is Pfizer, which, along with its partner BioNTech, developed one of the first COVID-19 vaccines. In 2021, Pfizer reported a $22 billion increase in annual revenue, largely attributed to vaccine sales. This surge in profits led to discussions about the pricing and accessibility of vaccines, especially in lower-income countries. These instances illustrate a system where the ultra-wealthy continue to amass wealth and influence, often at the expense of the broader population, who remain overworked and undercompensated. Chapter 7: The Escape: Finding High Vibrations. Okay, so what's the escape route? If this was a movie, this would be the part where Keanu Reeves swoops in and offers you the red pill. Except, real life isn't quite that cinematic, and our heroes don't always wear trench coats. It starts with little changes, conscious choices about what you consume, both physically and mentally. And no, I'm not saying you need to quit your job and go live in a yurt. Unless that's your thing, in which case, go yurt your heart out. The truth is, the system that keeps us vibrating low isn't some magical force. It's the result of choices, habits, and the way we allow ourselves to be influenced. Don't get me wrong, I know the game is rigged, for all the reasons we've looked at already and more. But that doesn't mean all hope is lost. If you want to flip the script, it starts with reclaiming those choices. It's less about some grand rebellion and more about tiny acts of defiance, what you feed your mind, your body, and your soul. Let's start with the basics: what you consume. And I'm not just talking about food, although, shout out to anyone who's replaced doom scrolling with meal prepping this year. I'm talking about all the stuff you take in every single day. It could be the podcasts you listen to, the social media you follow, or the books you read. If every morning you're waking up to an alarm followed by anxiety-inducing news alerts while you brush your teeth, that's a pretty surefire way to set a low-vibe tone for the day. Imagine this: instead of starting your day with a toxic cocktail of breaking news, influencer drama and realizing your favorite singer just got arrested for something unthinkable. So now you have to listen to that fire playlist on the down low in case you get cancelled. You choose to ease into the morning. Maybe avoid screens for 30 minutes, maybe longer. Maybe it's some meditation, maybe it's a morning walk. Or maybe it's just not getting sucked into the endless vortex of internet rage baiting before you've even had your first cup of coffee. When you choose to engage with what genuinely lifts you up, you're already fighting back. It's about feeding your mind positive vibes, genuine connections, and activities that light you up instead of drain you out. Read a book, binge on a documentary that doesn't end with "and that's how humanity might be doomed," or get lost in some creative project. These are the small yet powerful acts of rebellion against a culture designed to keep you feeling low. And then there's the physical side of things. Our bodies are part of the whole frequency deal too. You can't expect to vibe high if you're fueling your tank with garbage 24/7. We're not saying you need to go full green juice warrior or become a kale evangelist, but paying a little more attention to what you eat can change everything. Think of it as the cheat codes for good vibes, real food, movement that feels good, not like you're training for the Hunger Games, and maybe you could try drinking some actual water instead of that fourth energy drink. Seriously, drink some water. Here's another big one: connection. Real connection. Not just leaving a heart eyes emoji on Becky's 37th sunset photo on Instagram or engaging in half-hearted office small talk. We're talking about finding people who make you feel truly alive, and who aren't afraid to be their weirdest, most wonderful, most authentic selves. Because when you're around real people who vibe high, you can't help but vibe high too. The truth is, raising your vibrations isn't about escaping society or becoming some enlightened guru on a mountain top in Tibet. It's about gratitude. It's about small, conscious choices. It's about being present and finding joy in the little things. It's choosing connection over isolation, creativity over consumption, and curiosity over fear. If you want to mess with the system, start by raising your frequency. Because when you're vibrating high, you're harder to manipulate. You think clearer, you connect deeper, and you become less susceptible to the narratives that thrive on fear and division. The elites might have their strategies, but you have something they can't control: your own energy. And listen, it's not about being positive 24/7 or pretending that life isn't full of challenges. That's just toxic positivity wrapped up in a pretty bow. Life's gonna throw curveballs, and sometimes you're gonna have bad days, and that's okay. It's not about living in denial, it's about building a foundation so strong that even when the chaos comes, you're not thrown off course. You're the one steering the ship. Because at the end of the day, raising your vibration isn't just an act of self-care. It's an act of defiance. It's an act of rebellion. It's flipping a middle finger to a system that profits from your low vibes and reclaiming your right to joy, creativity, and connection. So, next time you feel drained, ask yourself, who benefits from me feeling this way? And then do something that sets your soul on fire, because nothing scares the elite quite like a world full of people who are wide awake and vibing high. Connect with people genuinely. Create something. Embrace what lights you up. It's rebellion with a smile on your face. And that, my friends, is how you fight the deep state, or the Illuminati, lizard people, or perhaps they're just rich. Either way, nothing messes with the system more than a population that's happy, creative, and content.